Herzlich willkommen and hello everybody who's not able to speak German. Don't worry, this video will be in English, so you will be able to understand it even if you don't speak German. Today's topic is the damage formula of Cabal 2. And before we head directly into the information, I will just clarify some things. First off, the whole video is about attack and defense. And actually it's about damage. But this video is not here for comparison between different stat types. Like, we are not going to compare defense to HP, so what's better to surviving stuff and stuff like that. That's not in this video. Also, this video is not about a specific class, it's not about a specific build. It's just about the plain damage formula, and the damage formula itself can be used for every class, for every build, so for everything in the game. This formula is like 60 to 90% proved. Or at least I can prove 60 to 90% of this damage formula. I can't prove it 101% because we have currently the problem of not being able to log into the game. Well, I could log into the Korean game if I buy an account, but I'm talking about the actual North American / European game. And because of this, it's only 70 to 19% proved, because there is still further testing needed to confirm my actual formula in the OBT and the release. Still, the damage formula I have created for this video, or in general, I've created in general, is based on my personal tests and simulations I have run in the CBT. It is on evaluating my personal video material. I just like to record everything I've done in the CBT, and with this material, in addition to Korean video material from high-level Korean players, I was able to work on this damage formula. Also, I've tested the formula with different skills in the CBT, so the formula works with every skill and not just like the auto hit of the game, but with every skill possible. Mainly, we were using, or I was using, the same attack in testing the formula, and I was variating the attack and defense values, and thus we have some numbers. Those numbers I've gotten from actual testing in the CBT or from watching different videos of Cabal 2, European, North American or Korean videos. I was able to do some equations or some calculations. This is one of the tables or one of the graphs that I actually got once I've started working with numbers. And this is the table to this graph. I'm only showing you this single table. I have dozens of tables in my Excel sheet, but the problem is it would fill more than like a lot of pages to show you all the stuff, and it's actually not important for the damage value itself. I'm just showing you so you see we have the right equation with this, another equation based on another table, and this is the other equation we have, and you see the graphs are the same. They both hitting the X at 0 at 12,000. But for that we are coming to that later. First, let's just take a look at the damage formula itself. So we're taking a look at the plain damage formula without adding any numbers currently. The damage done equals damage multiplied by crit multiplied by 1 minus defense divided by our attacker tier, plus minus 10%. I will just fill out what's like defense and what's like damage and what's like attacker tier. But this is the plain formula. When you put in all the values, you will have a formula that's showing you how much damage you will deal with an attack. But there is a second rule that's applying to the damage formula itself, and that's if the damage done is smaller or equals 1% of the defense of your target, you will do minimum damage, and the minimum damage in this game is 14. So, let's get to work with the formula itself, and we're going for the tier 1 formula. So that's the tier 1 formula. I will stop using crit in the equation because crit is just a multiplier, and so we can apply it even after we have calculated the damage done. And also from now on I will refrain from using the plus minus 10%. Yet I will later in the video talk about the plus minus 10% and why this is important for the damage itself. With this equation, if we add 6000 defense, we have a damage mitigation of 50%. Means that if we are attacked by a tier 1 attacker and that deals 1000 damage, we would reduce this damage by 50%, so the attacker would deal 500 damage. If this attacker is now dealing 100 instead of 1000 damage, we still would reduce the damage by 50%, but now we have the 1% rule, because 50 is less than defense, or 1% of the defense. What's 6000 and 1% is 60. We would deal the minimum damage, so the damage done would be 14. But now, if we crit, the damage will increase by 50%. So from the 50 damage we had, we would go to 75 damage. And 75 is bigger than 60. And thus, the damage would be, instead of 14, because we crit, it would be 75. If the damage just would be 65 after the crit, we still would go to the minimum damage. 55. Yeah, I'm sorry. So, with this in mind, you will now have one question, and I know what question it is. Attacker tier? Attack tier 1? What does you mean with that? Well, let's take a look at the damage formula, the tier 1 damage formula again. Damage done is damage multiplied by 1 minus defense divided by 12,000. If you're not that fit in math, this just means that we have a fixed linear damage mitigation. Means that every point of armor is worth the same damage reduction. So, if we add 12,000 damage into the 12,000 defense in the formula, then we have the problem that we would deal, or we would get 0 damage, because we have a 100% damage mitigation, and because of that, every hit we would receive would be only 14 damage. Well, it is possible for force shielders at level 40 to reach 12,000 defense, and at level 50 it's possible for every class in the game, even for the priest, the wizard and the force archer, to reach just 12,000 defense. And because of that, nobody would deal any damage to each other, because everybody would have 12,000 defense and 14 damage on like 10k HP. Have fun killing this, because we still have heals and HP regions and pots. So, what's the attacker tier is doing? The attacker tier is changing the formula. Better said, it's not changing the formula, but it's changing the value of defense you need to reach 100% of damage mitigation. Now, a very, very important thing. The tier of the attacker is based on the attack value and not on the damage. This is important because it is possible for an attacker to be in tier 1 and dealing more than 1000 damage if the target had no armor, and it is still possible for a tier 2 attacker to deal on a hit less than 1000 armor. This will have a severe effect on the actual damage that is dealt based on the defense of the target. To explain why this is important, we are going now into tier values. And those values are actually values from in the game. Please, I have another thing to say here. We currently worked with fixed numbers because these numbers sound right. The problem is that because of the time we had in the CBT, we could not test every possible of these like steps. So we have steps like the step is from 999 to 1000. We had no time to check, is it like this particular point of attack that's changing the attacker's tier? So the value, the real value in-game might be a little bit higher or a little bit lower than the values you see now. still you can perfectly work with them, and in my opinion these are the right points because they really make sense, and you will see why. Let's go for the first tier of attacker, the tier 1 attacker. This will be the main tier of everybody at level 40. Like the most people, like maybe 70 to 80% of all level 40 players will be a tier 4 attacker, tier 1 attacker, I'm sorry. Because it's ranging from 0 to 999 attack damage. And you need 12,000 defense for 100% damage mitigation. Why do I say it will be the main tier? Well, we had some players in the CBT that actually tried to get really good equip. And one of the best equipped players in the CBT was Pixie, a mage or a wizard from my guild, and he only had 819 attack. I'm not saying he was the highest one in the CBT, but he was one of the highest attack players in the whole CBT, and so his value was already really high with a good amount of equip he had gathered. Well, they're still missing force cores and upgrades and stuff like that, but he had 819. Then we have the tier 2. Tier 2 will be the main tier for every casual at level 50, and it will be for top tier level 40 players. Even if you're level 40, you can still, with like really good gear, reach the 1000 attack, and because of that you could go into tier 2 as a level 40 player. If you want to reduce the damage by 100%, if you want to reach 100 damage mitigation, you need 24,000 defense to do that. Now we have tier 3. Tier 3 will be for the top tier level 50 players. So for like 20 to 30% of, around 20 to 30% of all players at level 50. It's ranging from 1,500 to 1,999. And to reach 100% damage mitigation, we need those 30,000 defense. And we have the 4th tier. And the 4th tier, like only one person of all players at level 50 will reach this tier, because it's from 2,000 to 2,499 attack. Also, you need 36,000 defense for 100% damage mitigation. Why I'm certain about this stats and this tiers is they are based on the actual gear you can have with level 40 and level 50 combined with runes, cores and upgrades, and attack damage in every slot. Well, attack damage in every slot, if you have seen my video about loot chances, you know that it's very hard to get max rolls or to get equipment with more than 4 stats that you actually want. The link to the video is in the description, so if you didn't see my video yet, you can just look into it after this, and you might know what I'm talking about. So it's really not easy to reach this tiers, and so I've just put the tiers in. So let's go further. I just want to explain the ±10 damage and the 1% damage rule, and why this 10% ± damage can be really important in a fight. Therefore, I have this small equation. If the attacker is dealing 40 damage, if you have no armor and you have 3000 armor, you would reduce the damage from 40 to 30. And on this final damage, you would receive a ±10% damage, so the damage itself could be ranged from 27 to 33. 27, 28, 29 and 30 would just result, because of the 1% rule, in a minimum damage of 14. But 31, 32 and 33 would be the damage that's actually rolled and would be done at the damage itself. So the same base values could result in a lot, or in a really high damage number, or in the minimum damage, depending on 1% of the damage, of 1% of the target's armor. It's not that hard at 30, but if we say we're going to 20,000 armor, 1% of 20,000 is already 200, so it's 201 damage or 14 damage, and this is a huge amount. It's like 20 times the minimum damage. Now, let us put all what we have heard about into realistic combat situations. And some of you might know or might have seen or even participated in the CBT tournament. Everybody was saying one thing, and this is force shielders are OP. Even if force shielders are OP, in this particular situation, it's because reaching 10,000 defense at level 40 for a force shielder is really easy. So it wasn't that much of a deal for the guys like Mix to actually get to this defense value. It's just no deal. However, reaching 1000 attack at level 40 is really hard and requires tremendous amount of upgrades, cores, and other stuff to reach this tier. So everybody in CBT was like a tier 1 attacker, and we had no tier 2 attackers. So the force shielders who could reach 10,000 damage were close to being damage immune due to the fact that they could reach the 10,000 armor. Most players in the CBT were around 5,000 to 6,000 defense at level 40, and that's not easy. That's not hard to reach. It's like a little bit of defense on this equip and a little bit defense on this equip, and here we have your 5,000 defense. And on tier 2, in tier 1, that's 40 to 50% damage mitigation. So we are in good numbers here, because like priests and force bladers and stuff like that have 40 to 50% damage mitigation, and this is still resulting in a lot of damage on dealing their attacks. If we look on the average player's armor at level 40, and we making just level tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 attack, we would have a 20% damage mitigation for against the tier 3. Against the tier 2, 20% damage mitigation against the tier 3, and a 15% damage mitigation against the tier 4 player. The average player at level 50, that's not a force shielder, has around 7,000 to 9,000 defense. And we will just use these numbers later for another calculation. Before we go into stuff that you can actually look in at Korean videos, we are going to look at the attack and the defense value that's possible to reach at level 50 itself. One thing I want to mention before I'm going into the numbers, on these numbers, the passive skills from the nation wars are not yet added, because first, we do not know if Astsoft will implement exactly the same skills than the Korean version, and second, I said at the beginning I don't want to compare stats and skills and stuff like that. And the problem with the Nation War passives is that if you choose to take a Nation War passive, you might lose the ability or the possibility to take a Nation War active skill. And I don't want to compare active skills to the passive skills for this. You can still add the damage or the defense into the equations and still get the value you want to add, or you can look how much is possible. But for this, I'm just only looking, or we are only looking at what is possible for a single player to acquire by themselves. And it's possible for every class to reach 2,000 to 2,400 attack. That's perfectly possible. For the priest, the wizard, and the force archer, we are able to gather 14,000 armor. And if we add force cores on top of that, like a defense force core in every slot of the gear, we can reach up to 18,000 defense. At tier 1, tier 3, and tier 4, we had 60, 50, or 40% damage mitigation. Next in the row is Force Blader. The Force Blader, the only leather-wearing class, my beloved Astsoft, because Forge Archers are in the same defense tier than Priests and Wizards, can reach 15,500 armor, and with Force Core they could reach close to 20k. Resulting in 65, 55, and 45% of damage mitigation. Next is the Warrior, who can reach 17,000 defense, and with Force Cores again we could reach about to 21,000, resulting in 70, 60, and 50% damage mitigation. And last but not least is the force shooter. Force shooters can reach like 20,000 to 25,000 defense, and this would result in 80, 70, or 60% damage mitigation. Please, those damage mitigations are actually for the number without the fault cause. You see, if we just compare the different damage reductions, you see, if we stay at the tier 4 damage, while force archers, priests, and wizards are getting 40% damage, the force blader is getting 5% more damage than those. The warrior is getting 5% more damage than the force blader, and the force shooter is getting 10% less damage than the warrior. So the numbers are actually really fair if you look at the numbers itself. What do you think? So for the next one, we go into a very important message. Those numbers you have seen now, those numbers I have shown you, and those numbers we have talked about 40%, 50%, 60% damage mitigation are for maxed values. And only 1% up to 5% of all players who play Cabal ever will reach this actual numbers at level 50. We are talking about max rolled attack and defense stats on gear. We talk about runes. We talk about force cores. We talk about ability and upgrade cores, and actual equip that's upgraded to around +7, +10. This in mind, it is still possible to reach this, but please remember, just remember, if you haven't seen my video, loot chances, just go to the description and click on the link to the video. It's really hard to get equip at this level. So it's not that like everybody will run around with those 2000 attacks and like being a tier 4 attacker. Finally, let's work another bit with numbers, because numbers are important. My testing with Pixie, the wizard from my guild, we tested a lot of different abilities from the wizard to the actual damage test. And for now, we will use the Frostfire Bolt, level 1. It's an 8-second cooldown from the wizard, and that has a base damage of 200, and the scaling is around 1.00. We will use 500 attack, 1250, 1750, and 2250 attack values compared to 6000, 12,000, 16,000, and 24,000 defense values. Just to show you an overlook how much damage the same attack is dealing with added defense and with added attack based on the actual tiers. For tier 1 and the 500 attack, the Frostfire Bolt would deal 700 damage. And if we look at the 6,000 defense cap, we would just reduce, because we are in the 12,000 defense for 100% mitigation tier, that the damage is reduced by 50%, and it would be result in 350. For 12,000, 16,000, and 24,000 defense, because we are at the 1% rule, in addition to the damage reduction, we are at the minimum damage /14. Let's take how this numbers actually change if we going from tier 1 to tier 2 and adding 750 damage. Or not damage, but attack. If we have 1250 attack, the Frost Fire or Bolt would deal 1450 damage. It's double the damage that the attack dealt at 500 / tier 1 attacker. But if we look at the 6,000 defense, we have an increase more than double. We have more than double the actual damage, and we have 1100 damage for a non-crit hit against the player with 6,000 defense. And finally, we have, because the maximum value is 20,000 is 24,000, we will have damage at 12,000 defense and damage at 16,000 defense. If we jump for another 500 attack and we go to 1,750 attack and a frost firebolt that would deal close to 2,000 damage, the damage itself dealt after the damage reduction on a 6,000 defense player is close to 1,600. 1,600 is close to double the amount that the tier 1 attacker was dealing against the 6,000 defense player, but we only added 1,250 attack. So we have 5 times the damage for around 3 times the attack we had. And finally we are able to deal damage to a player with 24,000 damage. It's still a fair amount. We still deal 400 damage a hit. That's not a problem. Let's add another 500 and finally going to the tier 4 attackers. The tier 4 attacker would deal like close to 2,500 damage per hit. And with the reduction itself would result from 2,000 damage on a 6,000 defense player up to 820 on the max value defense player. For this, I want to add something. Most players ever, most players in type in terms of defense will be between 6,000 defense and 12,000 defense. This is the damage, or this is the defense range that most players at level 50 will have. So, on the other hand, most players at level 50 will be at tier 2. So having those two equations, or those two things between the 6,000 and the 12,000, we can see that on average a player at level 50 is dealing 1,100 to 700 damage. And if you take a look into Korean videos, you have no problem in finding those actual damage numbers on the screen. It's really easy to find. Still, there are people that are tier 3 attackers, and even on the tier 3 attacker you have a good amount of damage for those players. Another thing is that if we are looking at these numbers and we are looking at the damage itself, we can see if we say the average damage is 1,000 per hit, yes? Like we're doing the average of those, we have 1,000 attack, 1,000 damage per hit after the damage reduction. We have the following thing. Players at level 50 have around 10,000 to 15,000 HP. So with 10 hits, 10 actual hits, a player would be dead. If we add now like pots and we add like defense skills, and we have evasion and stuff like that, and we all adding this, a fight between 2 level 50 DPS players is done in around 20 hits. If maybe 20 to 30 hits. If we now say it's 2 seconds per hit, a 1v1 fight is 40 to 60 damage. It's 40 to 60 seconds. And again, this is really realistic. If you watch videos and you see people fighting, actual equal people with equal gear, they are fighting for like 30 to 60 seconds in a 1v1 situation. You just can go to YouTube and look at videos where normal players are fighting each other. And so these values are really, really, really good to see. And this is for the conclusion and for the end of the video. As I already have said a few seconds ago, that the numbers we can see in Korean videos are really accurate with the damage formula. If you set in a certain damage amount and we put it in, it's really accurate with that. So we still need the further confirmation. The first thing I will do once I hit 1,000 damage, 1,000 attack, 1,500 attack, I will just sit there and then just look if it's really the mark, or it's really the tier that I have set in this video to confirm that the actual tier switching, that the tier switching is no question. That this is out of question. We know this because of the 12,000 defense. We know there are tiers of damage. There's nothing we can talk about. There are tiers. So if you're higher in the damage, you will deal more damage because else nobody would deal damage. But we still need to confirm those actual tier points. Also, as I said, the formula is only 70 to 90% proved. It is still perfectly fine for every calculation you will deal here. Or you will deal for, like, what do I want in my equip? Because if you add your actual damage or your actual attack into the equation, add a little bit of base damage, and then it's a certain defense value, you will get close to the real amount of damage you will receive in-game. We were just perfectly fine. We could, in the CBT on the last day, we could say, if you have this attack, and we have this much attack on the attack, you will deal, if I have this much defense, that's damage to me. And it was perfectly fine, plus minus 10%, because there is a plus minus 10% up and down on everything. Also, please note that this video is only up to tier 4. The highest player I currently know is a warrior in Korea that has 2,300 attack. And this is still a fucking crazy amount. This guy is, or this girl, I don't know, is godlike, having so much of attack. So having higher than the tier 4 attackers at level 50 might be possible if you have everything perfect and everything is on attack and everything is nice. But still, at level 50, and that's the level we get in the next patch, it is tier 4 attackers. So, knowing this, we have a huge damage increase on reaching the next tier. If we just look at a player who has 999 attack, and he's fighting against a player with 12,000 armor, and he's dealing 1,000 damage with the attack on 999 attack, he would deal 14 damage. Because 12,000 defense in the tier 1 is 100% damage mitigation. But if we add just 1 point of attack, he would be a tier 2 attacker, and due to the fact that he's being a tier 2 attacker, the guy with 12,000 defense would need 24,000 defense to reach the 100% damage mitigation. But with only 12,000 defense, he only has a 50% damage reduction. And because of this, 1 point of attack is increasing the damage from 14 to 500. And I know I said I don't want to compare stats, but because of this, attack is so much more important than crit and attack speed if you are able to reach the next tier. If you're not able to reach the next tier, it's a completely other decision. But it is much more important to add 5 if you are at 1,495 damage or attack. It is more important to add another 5 attack to your stats instead of increasing your critical accuracy by 500, because you would jump to the next tier, and the next tier is a huge damage increase. Please keep this in mind. And with this said, I thank you for watching my video, and if you like my video, I would ask you to subscribe my YouTube channel. I will add another few videos in the next couple of days, so stay tuned, and thank you for watching.